The day Ethan Shaw took home the annual Medical Pioneer Award, I canceled a live stream that could have earned me over $1 million. I put on my most ordinary clothes and sat in the most inconspicuous corner of the audience. I wanted to surprise him. 7 years of marriage, and I was the invisible ATM behind his success. To fund the ALS treatment he called a drug that will change the world, I worked nonstop for 7 years, pushed myself until I coughed up blood, and wired him a total of $30 million. But when the spotlight came on and the host invited his family to the stage, a woman in a custom couture gown walked up, holding the hand of a 5-year-old boy. Ethan's eyes glistened with tears as he kissed her forehead. Thank you to my wife. Without her, there would be no Ethan Shaw standing here today. I stared at that boy and felt the blood drain from my entire body. The boy's name was Noah Shaw. That was the name we had chosen for the child I miscarried. The applause in the hall was thunderous, so loud it made my eardrums ache. I stared, unblinking, at the smiling faces of that family of 3, enlarged on the giant screen above the stage. Ethan was wearing the black tailored suit I'd had custom-made for him. He stood tall and straight. He glanced down at the woman beside him, his eyes overflowing with a tenderness that looked almost too deep to be real. Her name was Vivian Cole. The Starfield gown she wore was a globally limited edition from one of the most exclusive luxury fashion houses in the world. Last month, Ethan told me that a core centrifuge in the lab had broken down. He said they needed to rush order a replacement from Germany, and they were $200,000 short. Without a second thought, I dragged my fever-racked body through 4 extra hours of live streaming and wired him the money. That $200,000 was now wrapped around Vivian Cole's body. Mr. Shaw, the journey to developing this treatment must have been full of obstacles, the host said with a smile, holding out the microphone. What kept you going? Ethan squeezed the hand of the woman beside him, his expression warm and gentle. She did. My wife. She's been by my side every step of the way, and she gave me this wonderful son, Noah. Another wave of thunderous applause swept through the hall. I sat in that dark corner and bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. Noah. 7 years ago, I was 5 months pregnant. We were crammed into a studio apartment that barely fit the 2 of us, and we spent an entire week going back and forth before we settled on that name. He said, Lily, when our baby comes, let's name him Noah. The baby didn't make it. That day, I was hemorrhaging on the operating table. I called him over a dozen times. Every single call went straight to voicemail. Afterward, he knelt beside my hospital bed with red-rimmed eyes and slapped himself across the face again and again, saying he'd been locked in the lab running the most critical data tests of his career and had missed everything. He said, Lily, let's keep the name Noah. Save it for our next one. I believed him. I believed him for 7 years. I thought he was pouring his soul out for the sake of humanity. I thought he was carrying the weight of our future on his shoulders. Turns out, he was just draining me dry, so another woman could live in comfort and ease. The awards ceremony ended. The crowd dispersed. I pulled on a baseball cap and a mask, slipped past the press, and made my way to the VIP lounge. I knew this hotel well. The venue fee for tonight had been charged to Ethan's account last month, under the line item laboratory space rental, approved by me. The door to the lounge was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Vivian was sitting at the vanity mirror, touching up her makeup. The boy named Noah was on the sofa, slamming a rare limited edition Transformer toy against the cushions. At the sound of my entrance, Vivian glanced at me through the mirror and frowned slightly. Who are you? How did you get in here? She looked me up and down, faded jeans, plain black tee, and made no effort to hide her contempt. I'm here for Ethan. My voice came out rough. Years of high-intensity live streaming had done a number on my vocal cords. Vivian turned around and let out a cold laugh. Another desperate patient's family member? Or some broke startup founder begging for funding? She stood up, smoothed out her Starfield gown, and walked over to me, looking down at me like I was beneath her notice. Ethan is very busy. I manage his entire schedule. Whatever it is, you can tell me. I looked at her, specifically at the massive pink diamond on her ring finger. It caught the overhead light and threw sharp, glittering sparks in every direction. Your husband? I slowly curled my hand into a fist, my nails pressing deep into my palm. Of course, Vivian said, arching an eyebrow, her tone drenched in self-satisfaction. We've been married for 5 years. Our son is right there. Do you have a problem with that? 5 years. Ethan and I had been married for 7. For all 7 of those years, he told the outside world he was single. He said medical research demanded total purity of focus, that investors would think he was distracted. He was also afraid that my identity as a livestream shopping influencer would drag down the image of his high-tech company. To protect his reputation, I had never once mentioned his name in public. Even my closest assistant thought I was just a single woman who worked herself to the bone. Standing there looking at Vivian, I suddenly started to laugh. The kind of laugh that brings tears to your eyes. What's so funny? Vivian stiffened, her expression darkening. I'm laughing at you, I said. You've been played for a fool, and you think you're the lady of the house. Vivian's face changed. She swung her hand up to slap me. Who the hell do you think you are, talking to me like that? I caught her wrist midair and shoved it away. She was wearing heels. She stumbled and nearly fell. Mom. The little boy dropped his toy and ran over, wrapping his arms around Vivian's legs. At that moment, the door to the lounge was shoved open. Vivian, the car's ready, we should. The words died in Ethan's throat. He looked at me, standing in the middle of the room. Every trace of warmth and tenderness on his face vanished instantly, replaced by sheer, undisguised terror. Lily? Even his voice was shaking. Vivian steadied herself and immediately switched to a wounded expression, throwing herself at Ethan. Ethan. This crazy woman came out of nowhere and started screaming at me, and then she hit me. Ethan went rigid. His eyes bounced between me and Vivian. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead in real time. Ethan, get security to throw her out. Vivian tugged at his sleeve, her voice syrupy. Ethan sucked in a slow breath, forced down the panic behind his eyes, and pushed Vivian away. Vivian, take Noah to the parking garage and wait for me. Vivian froze. Ethan? Go. Now. Ethan's voice cracked like a whip, leaving no room for argument. She flinched, shot me one last suspicious look, then clenched her jaw, picked up the boy, and walked out. The door slammed shut behind her. Just the two of us now. The silence was total. Dead. Ethan looked at me. His throat moved. The panic bled out of his face, replaced by a look of weary resignation, the expression of a man burdened by circumstances beyond his control. He came toward me, reaching for my hand. Lily. When did you get here? You should have texted me. I stepped back, kept my eyes on him, cold and steady. If I hadn't come, how would I have known that you've got a wife and a 5-year-old son on the side? Ethan sighed, pressed 2 fingers to his temple. His tone took on that familiar flavor. Patient, indulgent, the way you'd humor someone being unreasonable. Lily, calm down. Let me explain. Her name is Vivian Cole. She was placed here by one of our major financial backers. You know how it is. We're in the most capital-intensive phase of our Phase 3 trials. There's an overseas investment group willing to fund us, but they require one of their representatives embedded in the core management structure. He held my gaze. Every word came out perfectly sincere. To secure the funding, I had to play along. The boy was adopted, purely for optics. We needed the image of a stable, family-oriented man so the investors would feel confident putting money in. I stared at his familiar face and felt a sudden, nauseating wave of revulsion rise in my stomach. There was a time when all it took was that look, weary eyes, quiet devotion, and I would soften. I would hand over every last dollar in my account without hesitation. Playing along? I let out a short, flat laugh. Playing along means buying her a limited edition designer gown? Playing along means buying her a pink diamond ring? Playing along means taking the name of my dead child and giving it to someone else's son. Ethan's expression flickered, but he recovered quickly. Lily, those things were provided by the investors. I didn't buy any of it. As for the name, that was a coincidence. Vivian insisted on it, and I had no choice but to go along for the sake of the bigger picture. He stepped closer and gripped both my shoulders, his eyes pouring out a depth of feeling that should have been impossible to fake. Lily, trust me. Everything I'm doing is for us. Once this drug hits the market, once I've made it, I'll announce to the entire world that you, Lily Johnson, are the only woman I have ever married. Just give me a little more time. Please. I looked at him and said nothing. If I hadn't watched him kiss Vivian on that stage with the look of a man who had everything he'd ever wanted. If I hadn't seen that boy's face and recognized Ethan's features in every line of it, I might have believed him again. Sure, I said. The corners of my mouth pulled up into something that looked more like a wound than a smile. Ethan visibly exhaled with relief. I knew it. You've always been the most understanding woman I know. He moved to pull me into a hug. I put a hand against his chest and stepped back. I'm tired. I'm going home. I turned, opened the door, and walked out without looking back. Behind me, he didn't follow. He probably assumed this was like every other time over the past 7 years, that a few carefully chosen words had smoothed everything over. He didn't know that the moment I turned away, The last of my tears had already dried. What was left wasn't grief. It was the cold, bone-deep resolve of someone who has decided to burn it all down. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was late. The place was empty, just like always. I'd paid for this penthouse in full. Ethan came by maybe once a month. He said the lab was too far away, that he kept a studio apartment near the office. I walked to the bar cart and poured a glass of whiskey. Drank it in one go. The burn traveled all the way down, but it didn't touch the cold at the center of my chest. I picked up my phone and called my personal attorney, James. James, I need you to pull everything you can on a woman named Vivian Cole. And I need a full financial audit. Every dollar I've transferred to Shaw Medical Technologies over the past 7 years. Every transaction. I want it itemized down to the cent. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then James's voice sharpened with quiet understanding. Miss Johnson, are we closing the net? No, I said, looking out at the city lights bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My voice was flat as ice. We're going for the kill. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into a secondary account. I started searching Vivian Cole's name across every social media platform I could think of. A woman like her, one who lived to show off, couldn't possibly have left no trace online. I was right. It took almost no effort at all. Her verified account bio read, lifestyle and luxury blogger, wife of Shaw Medical Technologies CEO. Over 1 million followers. I scrolled through her feed. Page after page of obscene wealth dressed up as aesthetic living. Ethan's 5-year anniversary gift finally arrived after 6 months of waiting. Worth every second. The photo was the pink diamond I'd seen on her finger tonight. Posted 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, Ethan had told me there had been an incident in the clinical trials. He said they needed $300,000 in hush money, or the company was finished. I'd stayed up all night running a flash sale live stream. By the end, my voice was completely gone. I spent 3 days on an 4 drip at the hospital. Noah's 5th birthday. Ethan chartered a whole yacht just for our little man. Best childhood memories incoming. The photo showed Ethan holding the boy on the deck of a luxury yacht, grinning like the happiest man alive. Posted 2 months ago. 2 months ago was the anniversary of my miscarriage. I spent that entire day sitting alone at a memorial park. Ethan sent a message saying he was locked in the lab and couldn't get away. Another day of being absolutely spoiled. Just picked up our new ocean view villa. Going to use it as my art studio. The photo showed a standalone house in the most expensive coastal neighborhood in the city, valued at no less than $5 million. Posted 1 year ago. 1 year ago, Ethan knelt in front of me, crying, saying the company's cash flow had collapsed and he wanted to jump off a building. I sold off majority stakes in my 2 most profitable beauty brands at a steep loss. I liquidated $5 million in assets to bail him out. I went through the photos one by one. Every glittering image, every breezy caption. Behind each one was a night I'd stayed up past dawn. Blood I'd coughed into a sink. Pain I'd swallowed and kept moving through. I thought I was funding a dream that would matter. I was feeding 2 parasites. I screenshotted everything, packaged it all up, and sent it to James. Then I went to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. The woman looking back at me was pale from chronic sleep deprivation. Dark circles carved into the skin under her eyes. I turned on the tap and splashed cold water on my face. Lily Johnson, you really are something else. But it's fine. Starting right now, I'm taking back everything that's mine. Every single cent, with interest. The morning sun did not bring warmth, only a sharp, sterile light that cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. At 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was James. He looked as if he hadn't slept, either. He carried a thick leather briefcase, his expression grave but entirely focused. Miss Johnson, he said, stepping into the foyer and placing the briefcase on the kitchen island. I spent the night running the preliminary audits. What we found is, well, it's worse than we anticipated. I handed him a cup of black coffee. Give it to me straight, James. James opened the folder, spreading out a series of financial flowcharts. Over the last 7 years, you have personally wired a total of $32,400,000 to various accounts associated with Shaw Medical Technologies. You believe this money was going directly into R&D, clinical trials, and laboratory equipment. He tapped a red line on the chart. In reality, only about $12 million ever reached the actual research team. The remaining $20 million was funneled through a series of shell companies registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. The sole beneficiary of those shell companies? Vivian Cole. I took a slow sip of my coffee, the bitterness coating my tongue. So, my $30 $1 million didn't just buy her Starfield gown. It bought her entire life. Yes, James said, his voice dropping. The coastal villa she posted about last year, purchased by a shell company called Cole Creative Assets, which was funded entirely by a loan from Shaw Medical Technologies. A loan that was immediately forgiven by Ethan as CEO. The yacht charter? Filed as a corporate team-building retreat. Even the pink diamond ring was logged under miscellaneous laboratory procurement. I let out a soft, cold breath. And the clinical trials? The ALS drug he keeps claiming is on the verge of a breakthrough? James pulled out another sheet. That's the most alarming part. The Phase 3 trials are in shambles because Ethan diverted so much funding to support his second family. The laboratory has been cutting corners. They've been using substandard chemical reagents, underpaying the research staff, and falsifying progress reports to keep you writing checks. The incident, he claimed, required $300,000 in hush money. It wasn't an accident in the lab. It was a group of researchers threatening to blow the whistle on his fabricated data. My hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from a profound, boiling rage. For 7 years, I had stood in front of ring lights for 12 hours a day. I had sold makeup, household goods, food, clothes, screaming until my throat was raw, smiling through migraines and stomach ulcers, all because I believed I was helping to cure a devastating disease. I thought I was helping him save lives. Instead, I was funding a fraud. I was paying for the luxury of the woman who slept in my husband's bed while my own child lay in a nameless grave. James, I said, my voice dangerously calm. What is our legal standing? Legally, you are in a very strong position, James replied, his eyes gleaming with professional intensity. The funds you provided were documented as personal loans to the company, backed by promissory notes that Ethan signed. Over the years, he thought they were just formalities to appease your accountants. But those notes state that if the company defaults or if the funds are misused, you have the right to demand immediate repayment or seize equivalent corporate and personal assets. Furthermore, because he used corporate funds for personal enrichment under the guise of research, we can file charges for corporate embezzlement and financial fraud. Good, I said. But a quiet lawsuit is too easy on him. He wants the world to see him as a savior. He wants the spotlight. We are going to give him the spotlight he deserves. What's the plan? We don't file the lawsuit yet, I whispered, looking at the screenshot of Vivian's Instagram post. First, we cut off the life support. Let's see how long his purity of focus lasts when the ATM stops working. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. It was Ethan. I let it ring until the very last second before picking up. Lily. His voice came through, filled with an anxious, breathless energy. Thank God you picked up. Are you okay?
I was so worried about you last night.
You walked out so fast and I couldn't sleep a wink. I'm fine, Ethan, I said, keeping my tone perfectly flat. Just tired. I know. You worked too hard, sweetheart. Listen, about last night.
I
hope you understand. It's just a temporary arrangement. Vivian is nothing to me. It's all for the company, for our future. You believe me, right? Of course. I lied smoothly. I always believe you, Ethan. A visible sigh of relief came through the receiver. I knew it. You're the only one who truly understands the sacrifices required for greatness. Anyway, Lily, there's a small issue. The German centrifuge supplier called this morning. They said the transfer for the $200,000 didn't go through. There must be some glitch with your bank. Could you call them and authorize it? We really need that equipment by the end of the week. I looked down at the mug in my hand. Oh, that wasn't a glitch, Ethan. I canceled the transfer. Silence. Dead, heavy silence on the other end of the line. What? What do you mean you canceled it? His voice lost its warm edge, replaced by a sudden, sharp panic. My accountants noticed some irregularities, I said, my voice dripping with
faux innocence.
They pointed out that SMT has received over $5 million this year alone, but the tax filings show almost no new equipment purchases. The bank insisted on a full audit before releasing any more funds. I didn't have a choice. An audit. Ethan practically shouted. Lily, you can't do that. A financial audit will freeze our operational accounts. Do you have any idea what that means? For the clinical trials? We are at a critical juncture. If we stop now, years of work will go down the drain. I'm sorry, Ethan, but my hands are tied, I said, enjoying the frantic rising pitch of his voice. The bank is very strict about anti-money laundering regulations. They said unless SMT can provide itemized receipts for the last 3 years of research expenses, they won't clear any more transfers from my personal accounts. Receipts. Ethan choked. I don't have time to gather receipts.
I'm a
Scientist, Lily, not a bookkeeper. You have to find another way.
Can't you take
Out a personal loan? Or liquidate some of your agency stocks? I can't, I said. Every asset I own is currently tied up in the audit. For the next month, I can't transfer a single dollar. A month? Ethan sounded like he was about to suffocate. Lily, we can't survive a week without cash flow. The lab rent is due. The researcher's payroll is on Friday, and he stopped himself before saying, and my wife's luxury credit card bills are
due?
I'm sure your major financial backers can help, I suggested, my voice sweet as poison. What about Vivian's family? The ones who placed her in your company? Surely an overseas investment group can spare a few $100,000 to keep their representative comfortable. Ethan went completely silent. I could hear his rapid, shallow breathing. He knew, as well as I did, that there was no overseas investment group. Vivian's backing was a lie he had constructed to keep me from asking why she was always by his
side.
They have a very strict disbursement schedule, Ethan stammered, scrambling for a lie. It takes months to get approval from their board. Lily, please, you have to help me. If the lab shuts down, everything we built, everything we sacrificed for is gone. I've sacrificed enough, Ethan, I said, my voice dropping the sweet act, turning cold as a winter night. Now, it's your turn to figure it out. I hung up before he could respond. Almost immediately, my phone began to buzz with text messages from him. I ignored them, turned the device face down, and looked at James. He's panicking, I said. Now, let's see what Vivian does when the money runs
out.
2 days later, the first crack in Vivian's perfect facade appeared. I was sitting in my dressing room, preparing for a routine evening live stream, when my assistant, Sarah, walked in with an iPad. Lily, have you seen this? Sarah asked, her brow furrowed. That luxury blogger, Vivian Cole. She just posted a video, and, well, it feels like she's throwing shade at you. I took the iPad. In the video, Vivian was sitting in the back of a luxury SUV, wearing a pair of oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf. Her tone was dripping with condescension. Hey guys, she said to the camera, sighing dramatically. I've been getting a lot of DMs about my outfit from the Medical Pioneer Awards the other night. Yes, it's custom couture. But honestly, the night was a bit ruined for me. There are some people in this city who have zero boundaries. Some low-class, desperate girl, probably a live stream seller or something, actually snuck into my private VIP lounge and tried to harass my husband for money. It's just so sad how some women have no dignity. They see a successful, handsome man and think they can just claw their way in. Ladies, if you want a luxury lifestyle, work for it. Don't try to leech off other people's husbands. The comment section was already filled with her followers expressing outrage on her behalf, calling the mystery woman a gold digger and a parasite. Sarah looked at me, worried. Lily, we don't know who she's talking about, but the timing is weird. And she mentioned live stream seller. Do you want me to have our PR team handle this? No, I said, a slow, sharp smile spreading across my face. Don't touch it. Let her post. In fact, let's make sure more people see it. What do you mean? Sarah, I want you to use our agency's network to boost her video. Share it. Stitch it. Get it on the trending pages. Let the entire internet see her calling me a low-class gold digger. Sarah stared at me as if I had lost my mind. But Lily, that will damage your reputation if people find out it was you. They won't find out until I want them to, I said calmly. And when they do, the backlash won't be hitting me. It will be hitting her. Do as I say. Once Sarah left, I logged into my personal laptop. I had spent the last 48 hours doing more than just auditing Ethan's company. I had also looked into Vivian's lifestyle and luxury blogger business. Vivian's brand was built on a foundation of lies. She claimed to be a self-made entrepreneur who ran a boutique luxury consulting firm, but in reality, her firm had only one client, Shaw Medical Technologies. She was billing SMT $50,000 a month for brand consulting, a blatant cover for Ethan to transfer my money directly into her personal checking account. Furthermore, she had recently signed a massive contract as the regional brand ambassador for Maison de l'Etoile, the ultra-luxury French fashion house that had designed her Starfield gown. The contract was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it had a very strict morality clause. Any public scandal, financial impropriety, or damage to the brand's reputation would result in immediate termination and a massive financial penalty. And the best part? Maison de l'Etoile's regional distribution and marketing agency in our territory was owned by Apex Media Group, the very conglomerate that held the majority stake in my own live streaming agency. I picked up my phone and called the managing director of Apex, a man who owed his last 3 quarters of record-breaking profits entirely to my record-breaking sales. "Mr. Vance," I said when he answered. "It's Lily Johnson. I need a favor." By Friday, Ethan was a broken man. He had called me 73 times. He had sent emails, left voicemails, and even shown up at my office, but my security team had blocked him at the door, citing private corporate meetings. Without my cash injection, his laboratory was falling apart. The researchers, who hadn't been paid, had refused to run the latest batch of tests. The landlord of the laboratory facility had threatened to evict them by Monday if the rent wasn't paid. Worse, Vivian was screaming at him. James's team, acting on my behalf, had filed a court petition to temporarily freeze SMT's corporate accounts, pending the
Audit.
This meant Vivian's luxury credit cards, which were tied to SMT's corporate lines, were declined. When Ethan finally managed to corner me, it was in the underground parking garage of my apartment building. He had sneaked in behind a delivery truck, looking disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, his tailored suit wrinkled.
Lily.
He cried, rushing toward me as I walked to my car. "Please, you have to. Listen to me. You can't do this to me." I stopped, looking at him with cool detachment.
Ethan.
"What are you doing here? This is private property." "I had to see you," he pleaded, reaching out to grab my arm, but I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "The company is dying, Lily. The lab is going to lock us out. On Monday, the researchers are threatening to go to the press. And Vivian is threatening to take Noah and leave me because our accounts are frozen." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought Vivian was just a representative of your investors. Why would she care about your accounts being frozen? And why would she take the adopted boy?" Ethan's face went pale. He swallowed hard, realizing he had trapped himself in his own lies. She's become very attached to the boy, and she's emotional," he stammered, sweat dripping down his temples. "Lily, please, I beg you. Just wire me $500,000. Just $500,000. I'll pay you back twice that amount as soon as the clinical trials are approved."
I'll sign.
"Whatever you want." I stared at him, letting the silence stretch between us until his breathing became erratic. "There is one way," I said slowly. Ethan's eyes lit up with desperate hope.
What?
"Anything. Tell me, Lily, I'll do anything." "Next Tuesday, SMT is hosting the International Venture Capital Summit, right?" I asked. "You're supposed to present the Phase 3 data for the ALS drug to a group of global investors."
Yes.
"Yes, if we get their funding, SMT will be valued at over $1 billion. I will personally guarantee a $5 million bridge loan to cover all your debts and keep the lab open," I said, watching his chest rise with hope. "On one condition." "What condition?" "I want to be there," I said. "And I want Vivian to be there, too. I want her to host the VIP reception. After all, she's the face of your supportive family, right? I want to see the presentation myself. If the data is as good as you say it is, I'll sign the loan agreement right after your speech." Ethan looked confused, but he was too desperate to question it. "That's it? You just want to attend the summit? And you want Vivian to host?" "Yes," I smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that I had practiced in front of the mirror. "I just want to make sure my investment is safe. If the presentation goes well, SMT is saved." "It will go well. I swear to you, Lily, the data is perfect," Ethan cried, practically falling to his knees in relief. Thank you, Lily. I knew you wouldn't abandon me." "I would never abandon you, Ethan," I murmured. "I'm going to make sure you get exactly what you deserve." The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a sea of glittering chandeliers, expensive suits, and champagne flutes. The International Venture Capital Summit was the biggest event of the year for the medical technology sector. Hundreds of high-profile investors, journalists, and industry leaders were in attendance. Vivian Cole was in her element. She was wearing another stunning gown, this one a sleek, emerald green silk Piece provided by Maison de Elatoile. She glided through the crowd, holding a glass of champagne, laughing delicately, and introducing herself as the creative director and proud wife of the CEO. She had no idea that her credit cards had only been temporarily reactivated for tonight by a special waiver from my legal team. She thought Ethan had resolved the glitch. Ethan stood near the stage, checking his presentation on a tablet. He looked nervous, his eyes scanning the room constantly. I arrived late. I didn't wear my ordinary clothes tonight. I wore a stunning, backless crimson gown that clung to every curve of my body. My hair was styled in elegant waves, and my makeup was flawless, highlighting the sharp, fierce beauty I had hidden behind casual clothes for 7 years.
I
Was no longer the exhausted, pale woman coughing up blood in the dark.
was.
Lily Johnson, the queen of the livestream industry, a self-made mogul who controlled a multi-million-dollar media empire. As I walked into the ballroom, the whispers started. Is that Lily Johnson, the top livestream host? What is she doing at a medical tech summit? She looks stunning. Vivian, who was holding court near the VIP bar, heard the commotion and turned
Around.
when her eyes landed on me, her face contorted in a mixture of shock and sheer rage. She handed her glass to a waiter and marched over to me, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor.
You?
She hissed, her voice low so the nearby guests wouldn't hear. How did you get in here? I told you to stay away from my husband. Did you seriously think you could sneak in here dressed like that and embarrass us? I looked down at her, my expression utterly calm. Embarrass you? Vivian, I'm here because I was invited. Invited? By whom? This is an exclusive, invite-only event for high net worth investors and partners. You're just a low-class internet salesperson. You don't belong here. I think I do, I said, taking a glass of champagne from a passing tray. In fact, without me, this event wouldn't even exist. You arrogant bitch, Vivian sneered, her voice rising slightly. I don't know what kind of delusion you're living in, but I am the lady of this house. Ethan is my husband. My son is his heir. You are nothing but a desperate stalker. Security. She waved her hand to call over the security guards standing near the entrance. Before the guards could reach us, Ethan came rushing over, his face pale as paper. Vivian. Stop, he yelled, grabbing her arm. Ethan, let go of me. Vivian snapped, glaring at him. This is the crazy woman from the other night. She's here again, trying to ruin your big night.
I'm
Having security throw her out. Shut up, Vivian. Ethan roared, his voice shaking with terror. Vivian froze. She had never heard Ethan raise his voice like that, especially not to her. Ethan? Ethan didn't look at her. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, his hands
trembling.
Lily, you made it. Please, let's not do this here. The presentation is about to start. I smiled at him, a warm, terrifying smile. Of course, Ethan. Don't let me keep.
You.
Go on stage. Show the world what you've built with my money. Vivian's eyes widened. Your money? What is she talking about, Ethan? Ethan ignored her, dragging her away toward the VIP seating area. I watched them go, then turned to James, who was standing quietly in the shadow of a marble pillar. Is everything ready? I asked. James smiled, pulling a remote control device from his pocket. The media team has taken over the AV booth. The live broadcast feed is connected. We have over 10 million viewers tuned into your official streaming channel right now, waiting for your special announcement. Good, I said, taking a sip of the champagne. Let the show begin. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. Ethan walked onto the stage, the spotlight catching his tailored suit. He looked every bit the brilliant, heroic scientist the world believed he was. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed investors, Ethan began, his voice projecting confidence, though I could see the slight tremor in his hands. For 7 years, Shaw Medical Technologies has pursued a singular, revolutionary goal to find a cure for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. Today, I am proud to present the final phase 3 clinical data for our drug, Savorine. The giant screen behind him lit up with complex molecular structures, charts, and data tables. Our trials have shown a 92% efficacy rate in halting the progression of the disease, Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger as he fell into his practiced pitch. This is not just a treatment. It is a miracle. It is a drug that will change the world. The audience gasped, and some began to applaud. But behind every great scientific breakthrough, there is a story of sacrifice. Ethan said, his voice softening dramatically. He looked toward the VIP section, where Vivian was sitting, holding Noah in her lap. I could not have done this alone. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Vivian, and our son, Noah.
They have
Been my rock, my inspiration, through the darkest nights of this journey. The spotlight swung to Vivian, who smiled radiantly, waving to the crowd.
the
Applause was thunderous. And now, Ethan said, smiling, I would like to invite our primary financial partner to the stage to sign the $5 million expansion loan that will bring Savorine to the global market. He looked toward me, gesturing with his hand. Please welcome Ms. Lily Johnson. The crowd murmured in confusion. A livestream influencer? The primary partner of a high-tech medical firm? I stood up, smoothed down my red gown, and walked gracefully up the steps to the
stage.
Ethan had a folder on the podium containing the loan agreement I had promised. He handed me a gold pen, his eyes filled with a desperate, silent plea. Just sign it and we both win. I took the pen, but I didn't look at the paper. Instead, I walked over to the microphone. Thank you, Dr. Shaw, I said, my voice echoing clearly through the massive
hall.
And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight to witness this historic moment. I looked out at the audience, finding Vivian's eyes. She was glaring at me with pure venom. Before I sign this agreement, I said, I think it's important for the investors to understand the true foundation of Shaw Medical Technologies. For 7 years, SMT has been funded entirely by me. Every laboratory rental, every chemical reagent, every salary paid to the researchers, it all came from the money I earned standing in front of a camera, working until my vocal cords bled. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Journalists began raising their cameras. Lily, what are you doing? Ethan whispered frantically, stepping closer to me, trying to block the microphone. Sign the paper. We can talk about this later. I ignored him, my voice growing stronger, colder. But recently I discovered that my $30 million investment wasn't just funding medical science.
It
was funding a masterpiece of deception. I gestured to the AV booth. The screen behind Ethan suddenly flickered. The molecular structures and clinical data vanished, replaced by a massive financial ledger. It was the itemized audit report James had prepared. As you can see on the screen, I said, over $20 million of SMT's research funds were funneled directly into the personal accounts of Vivian Cole, the woman Dr. Shaw just introduced as his wife. The audience gasped. The camera flashes became a blinding frenzy.
No.
That's a lie. Vivian screamed from her seat, standing up, her face twisted. In panic. She's fabricating this. Security. Turn off the screen. But the security guards didn't move. They had been instructed by Apex Media's management to stand down. But that's not all. I continued, looking directly at Ethan, whose face was now entirely devoid of color. The Phase 3 clinical data Dr. Shaw just showed.
You?
It's fake. I pressed a button on a small clicker in my hand. The screen changed again, displaying internal emails between Ethan and his lead researchers, along with the actual, unedited lab results. The actual efficacy rate of Savorine is less than 12%, I said, my voice cutting through the shocked silence of the room. And the side effects include severe, irreversible organ damage. When the research team refused to sign off on these fabricated reports, Dr. Shaw used my money he claimed, was for hush payments to settle lab accidents, to buy their silence. Lily, please. Stop. Ethan sobbed, falling to his knees on the stage, grabbing the hem of my gown. You're destroying me. You're destroying everything. No, Ethan, I said, looking down at him with utter contempt. You destroyed yourself when you decided to build your paradise on my blood. I looked back at the audience and at the camera that was broadcasting this live to 10 million viewers online. As of tonight, I am officially filing a lawsuit against Ethan Shaw and Shaw Medical Technologies for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and breach of contract. I am demanding the immediate return of $32 million, and I am seizing all assets associated with the company, including the Ocean View Villa, the yacht, and the personal luxury items purchased with my funds. I looked at Vivian, who was shaking, tears of humiliation and panic streaming down her face as the crowd stared at her in disgust. And to Maison de Elatoile, I added smoothly, as the majority shareholder of your regional distribution partner, I am formally requesting the immediate Termination of Vivian Cole's brand ambassador contract, effective immediately, due to the violation of her morality clause. Vivian let out a strangled cry and collapsed back into her seat, covering her face as journalists surrounded her, their cameras flashing relentlessly. The aftermath was swift and absolute. By midnight, the news of the SMT fraud scandal was the top trending topic. Globally, the live stream had been viewed by over 30 million people. The police arrived at the Ritz-Carlton before the gala even ended. Ethan was led out of the hotel in handcuffs, charged with securities fraud, corporate embezzlement, and scientific falsification. Because the ALS drug had received federal research grants, he was also facing federal charges that carried a prison sentence of up to 20 years. Vivian's world crumbled in a matter of hours. Maison de l'Etoile not only terminated her contract, but filed a lawsuit against her for breach of contract, demanding a $3 million penalty for the damage she had caused to their brand reputation. The Ocean View Villa was seized by the court the next morning. Vivian and her son were evicted, their belongings piled on the sidewalk as journalists filmed their fall from grace. When Vivian tried to access her personal bank accounts, she found them entirely frozen. Every asset she had ever owned, every designer bag, every piece of jewelry, including the pink diamond ring, was confiscated to pay back SMT's creditors. Mostly me. 2 weeks after the scandal, I sat in my office at the agency. The air was clean, the light soft and warm. For the first time in 7 years, my chest didn't feel tight. I hadn't coughed up blood in weeks, and the dark circles under my eyes had finally faded. James walked in, carrying a final set of documents. "It's over, Lily," he said, handing me the papers. Ethan accepted a plea deal. He's been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. All of SMT's remaining assets, including their patents and intellectual property, have been transferred to your name. We've sold off the non-fraudulent research equipment and recovered about $25 million in cash. And Vivian? I asked. She's ruined, James said, showing no sympathy. She's living in a tiny rental apartment on the outskirts of the city, working a minimum wage job to pay off her legal debts. She tried to sue Ethan for child support, but since all his assets were seized by us, she won't get a cent. She's completely blacklisted from the fashion and blogging industry. No one will touch her. I looked out the window at the bustling city below. What about the actual ALS research? I asked. The researchers who were underpaid. Most of them have agreed to work for the new foundation we set up, James smiled. The $12 million that actually went to research was solid. The science was real, Ethan was just rushing it and faking the final data. Because he was desperate for money. With proper funding, ethical management, and actual scientific integrity, the researchers believe they can develop a safe, effective treatment within 3 years. Good, I said, signing the final papers and handing them back to him. Make sure they have everything they need. I want that drug to be developed, not for Ethan's glory, but for the people who actually need it. James took the folder and nodded. You did a good thing, Lily. I did what I had to do, I said softly. After James left, I stood up and walked to the mirror. I looked at my reflection. My skin was radiant. My eyes were bright and full of life. The hoarseness in my voice was gone, replaced by a clear, steady strength. I picked up my phone, opened my live streaming app, and scheduled a new broadcast. For tonight. The title of the stream, A New Beginning. I smiled at the screen, turned it off, and walked out into the sunshine.